Greetings once again. This is Instructor Benjamin Bilal speaking to you on this 12th day of May 2020. We welcome you. We honor you. We pray that you're able to get out of this Cosmic Qur'an Ramadan session, as I call it, information which serves as news that you can use. And the surah of the Quran that we are mostly drawing from in these 30 days is called the Surah An-Naba, which means the great news. So we're praying that there is some tremendous news that you can use that will be responsible for the uplift of your total human experience. And we also pray that you not be the victim of the news that turns out to be so momentous that your human life collapses underneath the pressure. The messages in this particular surah are designed to do both. It's designed to appeal to the people whose goodness is on the rise within them and to elevate them to unfathomable heights of excellence and of accomplishment in this world. However, it is simultaneously designed to uproot those who have been artificially rooted as leaders in our lives, as influences in our lives, because of the fabricated frequencies that they have been used to operating by, that has actually been controlling the destiny of human beings, and this scheme has actually been in effect for thousands of years now. We're living in a day and age where the scheme itself is beginning to unravel. We're living in a day that Imam W.D. Muhammad referred to as a day in the judgment. So there will be a series of these kinds of developments. And as long as we're able to keep our finger on the pulse of what is taking place, we can remain on the safe side of this transition. There's a shifting of paradigms taking place. There is a shifting of paradigms that has taken place even on the cosmic level. And that's why I'm referring to the Quran as the Cosmic Quran. There are seasonal changes that are taking place based on seasonal cosmology. What does that mean? That means that in the same very way that our annual year of 12 months keeps a constant shifting of 4 basic seasons that we call spring, summer, winter, and fall, in that same way, the universe or the cosmos itself has similar seasons that take place over generations of time, over many thousand years, 26,500 years approximately, for each one of these cosmic seasons to come in, to do what it does, and then to dissipate and make way for the next set of cosmic energies. So according to the cosmology of the seasons that we're experiencing, the universe has left the energies related to what the zodiac folk have called Pisces. And it's represented in the picture of the 2 inverted fish that they show us in the zodiac. Now, this is not to get you all caught up in the zodiac. This is to get you caught up in the information that the zodiac folks use to develop the zodiac, which in many cases came to be artificially influenced by men's trajectories where they wanted to see humanity go, or by their guesswork. But the cosmos has no guesswork. And everything that needed to be captured of the truth regarding the zodiac or any other act has been captured perfectly and purely and protected within the pages of the Quran. So if Instructor Bilal tells you something that you might think sounds a little bit sci-fi or a little bit out of the realm of what you know to be al-Islam and the life of Muhammad and so forth, it's because you haven't checked my sources. See, I bring you sources. And those sources are what corroborates the connections between what I'm bringing you as logic and what Allah has actually established in the cosmic realm as logic from Him. There's no intercessor in that logic when you study directly from His fitrah. So those inverted fish represent an influence that has been in the world for all of these years that is mostly geared towards division. The reason those fish are going in opposite directions is that the people who study this phenomenon recognized that these eras that we come into every so often, universally speaking or cosmically speaking, they leave an influence that is like the influence of the chosen symbols that men have left on these time periods. And again, Pisces represents the time of opposites. So you're going to find that in those, or contained within the brackets of those years that were under Pisces, you're going to find a lot of activity on Earth that represents opposite frequencies or ideas that move in opposites. So it was during this particular frame of frequencies that the world came into what we came to know as racism, which is the viewing of so-called races as being opposite to each other, natural enemies of each other, etc. We came into the ideology of masculine domination of the world after being in many, many generations of feminine energy, as it had established what were called the matriarchal societies, societies that were mostly ruled by feminine presence and the feminine energy and feminine gurus and feminine griots. And it was the woman who was considered to be the expert in medicine. They called her the medicine woman. And it was the woman who was considered to be the go-to person for calculating the future, what would happen in the future under certain circumstances. And it was the men that were mostly there to provide the protective presence, to provide the efforts towards a hard labor tasks that needed to be done. So the masculine presence was there. The men were building the homes and the men were doing a lot of the harder labor, just as they're doing now on the most part, unless a machine has taken your job. And the women were mostly dependent, the women, were the ones who were mostly dependent on to keep that feminine energy intact in the community. And the communities were not governments as we know governments now. The communities were villages. They didn't have a President Trump and all of that. They had mostly female leaders who were the go-to people for advice and for many of the other things that later came to be vice, once under the domination of the masculine principle. Yeah. Once the chauvinism and the macho thing came in, then a lot of the feminine presence and at that energy and what that energy was capable of producing, especially in a feminine universe or yoni-verse, those accomplishments began to wane, they began to subside, and they began to die in favor of the hardcore, materialistic, macho, muscle-oriented ideologies that we're experiencing now. When we study modern day ideas, modern day psychologies, modern day ideologies, and so forth, and modern day mythologies even. Mythology shifted from the so-called goddesses to the so-called gods. This shift took place because of this universal and ever-changing sets of energies that we were discussing earlier as cosmic seasons. That's how Mary in the Catholic Church became replaced by the masculine Holy Ghost of the Protestants. The feminine energy that was related to Father, Son, and Mary became subverted, and Mary got substituted out, kicked to the rear, in favor of another masculine entity that they called the Holy Ghost. So we were talking yesterday concerning certain words that are given to us in the Quran, in the Qur'anic Arabiya, or the Qur'anic Arabic. And we left off speaking about a vitally important word called the ZAWJ that is mentioned within the context of Surah 78 and Naba'a. it mentions the fact that Allah created us as ZAWJain, or two people who represent complementary forces, a combination of complementary forces, not opposing forces, but complementary forces, ZAWJ. And it contains the three important letters ZA, Waw, Jim. But it's really pointing towards two of those letters. The waw in the middle is actually serving more as a vowel than as a consonant. But the waw is a connector, as you know. It's used in Arabic to connect one thing with another that follows it. So if we review the letter za, the Z sound, za, it represents things that happen swiftly, and it also represents those things that operate outside of its normal circle. And I gave you the examples in English of the word zoo, where we find animals who are running around and hopping in and out of trees and doing whatever they do in the grass and all of that. They're living their lives, but they're living their lives outside of the normal activity of the normal circle of activity that you would normally find them in if you were viewing them in their jungles or in their forests or in their natural habitats outside of the zoo. They're trying to make those zoos now more inclined towards how their natural habitats are situated, but it's a difficult, if not impossible, thing to do. But that's the za operating in the word zoo. And I also gave you the word crazy. The Z in the crazy means that your mind is operating outside of its normal framework. The word zany is not that far from the meaning of crazy, and that Z in zany is doing the same thing in the mind, as it causes the mind to do things and have the person say things that are just like outside of the circle of your comfort zone. That was zany. And I also gave you the Arabic word zakat, which all of us know means charity. But when you factor in the meanings of these letters and you go a little bit deeper into the ocean of their intrinsic meanings, then you know that zakat is not just giving somebody something. Zakat is describing how you're supposed to give somebody something. You're supposed to give it with a quickness, with a swiftness. And you're supposed to, if you can, give outside of the normal circle of giving. What is the normal circle of our giving? It's the giving to our families. So when you give to issues and concerns that are outside of your immediate concerns, that's zakat. When you give to the masjid, or when you donate to the church or whatever, and you give it and it's outside of what your weekly check normally takes care of in terms of your household, your rent, your mortgage, your bills, and all of that, even your cat food or your dog food if they're part of your family, right? That's not the zakat you're giving them. But when you do that same thing and extend your reach outside of your normal circle related to the people you give to, that becomes zakat. And it's the Z, the za letter in zakat that is enforcing the idea of giving outside of the normal circle of giving. And of course, the ka in zakat means the palm of the hand. So what that word is saying is that zakat is supposed to be the effort on the part of those things that you've been holding on to in the palm of your hand, so to speak. The effort to give those things swiftly. Stop thinking about it. Don't overthink it. You have it as extra. Go give it now. Find somebody, like the Prophet is said to have done, prayers and peace be upon him, upon his deathbed. He was still looking for things to give away outside of the circle of Fatima and the Aisha and whoever else was in his household. So that's zakat. That's za. The next letter would be waw. We're talking about ZAWJ. Waw just means connected to. As it is connected to whatever the letter jim means. We're talking za, waw, jim. So we're up to jim. Jim, as I told you, means the movement towards a water source. A movement towards a water source. So when you go to Hajj, which contains two jims, which means that whatever jim means is being reinforced in this word. When you go to Hajj, it's a movement towards a water source. The water source literally is Zamzam, but the water source figuratively is the moral teachings that you're receiving while being in the presence of the Kaaba. You're receiving a moral lesson, being in the midst of sometimes millions or several millions of people, all trying to touch the black stone, all trying to circumambulate the Kaaba. There are people who will go just buck wild in an environment like that. We're not used to it. We're coming from the hood, from the ghetto, where people brush up against you in the subway. You ready to do them a little something, something. Now you got thousands of people pushing to your left, pulling from the right, trying to throw stones at the Jamarat and hitting you in the head with the pebble, and you get pissed off, excuse the expression. But it's a situation for you to control what? Your emotionality. And emotionality is symbolized also by water. Water, if it's left alone, will remain at peace. But as soon as you touch it, it's going to ripple. That's your nervous system. That's your emotionality at work. So Jim, once again, is movement towards a water source. And water, we just mentioned, is a symbol of emotionality. It's also a symbol of a morality, moral thinking that keeps you clean, and also a symbol of truth, which also needs to be kept clean and pure. So Jim is that movement towards a water source. And in the presence of our ZAWJ, our mate, our complementary half, we should be quick. You see, ZAWJ, we should be quick to move towards actions which serve the same purpose as water. Water refreshes us by slaking our thirst. Water energizes us and it makes us feel better. You get up in the morning and you've been sleeping and your mouth is dry and you can take that fresh glass of water. Don't make it Kool-Aid, don't make it soda pop, don't make it anything else first thing in the morning, especially not even juice. The first thing we should be drinking in the morning is some fresh water to revive our cells. You know, when we're finished with our workout at the gym, we head for a water source called the water fountain. If running around during gym period or in the gym made you thirsty, we head for a water source. And if we're in high school or college, when we're finished playing football or basketball or whatever, we head for the showers, still a water source. But look at the word that's being used for the place that we leave from to go find the water source. It's called the gym. You see that? Where do you think they get that? Where do you think they got that word gym? They got it from the Arabic letter jim, because somebody knew in their history that the combination of the j sound in J, or in this case the English soft G sound, connected to the M sound that we have in this GYM combination called the gym. They understood somewhere in antiquity that that combination means to head towards a water source. So this is why Instructor Bilal says it's not that this system that I have named Nunetics was never in existence. It's that it was in existence and it has been retrieved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an inheritance for us. And when I say us, I'm talking specifically about the African American population that many of us choose to call Bilalian. And that's not God being racist. That's not God being an ethnocentrist. That's Allah being just, because his allowance of the people who took us from our native land, if that's the story, that's the truth, or that's partially true. Some of us were here already, believe it or not. But the point is, if you were here and you were the level of dark complexion that got you too much attention from people who wanted you to do all of the work while they sat back and sipped lemonade and fraternized with your wife. Those people, the first thing that they did was took away the ability in our people to communicate with each other effectively, sometimes destroying whole languages that have been established in Africa, and removing the ability to speak to each other, which was one of their greatest fears, that we would continue to communicate with each other, maybe in a language that they did not understand, and plan subterfuge. So they couldn't afford that, so they took our language from us. That was the first thing that they did. So in this day of requital, in what Imam Muhammad called a day in the judgment, part of the judgment or part of the decision making on the part of Allah is to do the just thing and return to those same people the first thing that was taken from them, our tongues. So Nunetics represents the return of our tongues and our ability to communicate. But Allah went up to them because Nunetics has been gifted with the ability to decipher practically any language, not just the English language, but any language on planet Earth that's a spoken language. Because Nunetics is not dealing with letter systems like the Germanic language and the Spanish language and the Swahili language. No, those are the smaller entities contained within the science of Nunetics. Nunetics is dealing basically with 7 basic sounds that the human mouth produces. It can't produce anything outside of those 7 areas of pronunciation. So once you learn through Nunetics what those 7 levels of pronunciation are, you're going to learn alongside that what each one of those 7 modes of pronunciation mean psychologically, psychically. What kinds of messages are they conveying to the human mind, to the human soul, and to the human emotionality? That's what you need to learn, and that's what Nunetics is here to offer you. And if I were you, I'd get on this train early while the doors are still open. Because there's a world of thinkers out there that are waiting. They don't even know it exists yet. But once they find out that it exists, they ain't going to do what many of y'all are doing and sit and think about it. And, well, I wanted to buy a new stereo with this money. They ain't going to do that. They're going to call their Uncle Luther. They're going to call their cousin Pookie Rahman. They're going to put their little money together and say, listen, I tell you what, we're a household. This instructor, Imam guy, he said we can get in there as a household. So I'll pay for it. You guys chip in, and we just get the hookup. I send you the link. That's all. I don't care. That's what I want you to do. Because my objective is not to get rich off of you who have no money. My objective is to introduce this to the world so I can get rich that way and service that many more people, while still living on the same basic level I'm living on now, comfortable. I don't need what I need with a mansion, gold cars, and all that foolishness that they're doing in Saudi and some other rich nations on this planet, while people starve around them, by the way. I don't need that. I was born to do what I'm doing, reviving language for the entire world, not just the Muslims even. The entire world is going to get excited about this system of Nunetics, so stay tuned.